Most of us were raised with the same picture in our minds: wide open land, long rows, plenty of empty space between crops. The idea that if you just give plants room, they'll reward you with abundance. That belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from watching our parents, our neighbors, and sometimes our own younger selves work the land that way for decades. But here's something quietly unsettling. In parts of Japan, many farmers grow vegetables in spaces no larger than a modest backyard. Some work narrow strips tucked beside homes, paths, or fences. No sprawling fields, no endless rows. And yet, season after season, their harvests are heavier, steadier, and more reliable than gardens many times the size. This isn't about having quicker hands or stronger backs. It isn't about youth, energy, or pushing harder. In fact, the longer you observe, the clearer it becomes. This approach rewards calm movement, careful timing, and deep familiarity, the kind of wisdom that grows from years of paying attention, not rushing through tasks. When I first saw how close their vegetables were growing, I remember shaking my head. Everything I'd learned said it should fail. The soil looked crowded. The plants looked too near. And yet, something was happening there that I couldn't explain at first. Something I couldn't unsee once I noticed it. What surprised me most was how gentle the work looked. Less bending, less pulling things out and starting over. Almost no wasted effort. This way of gardening doesn't punish you for slowing down. It improves because of it. Behind all of this is a quiet mindset, passed from older hands to younger ones, rarely mentioned in modern advice. And the most unexpected part, that mindset doesn't even begin with seeds, soil, or tools. Before we go any further, welcome, truly welcome, to Golden Garden Days. I'm John, and I'm glad you're here. This is a space for people who still love to grow, even as their bodies ask for more kindness. If you enjoy thoughtful, steady garden wisdom and want to garden in a way that feels peaceful again, consider subscribing and becoming part of our circle. Because once you understand how Japanese farmers really see their gardens, you may realize you've been closer to the right way all along than you ever thought. If you look closely at many Japanese vegetable gardens, the first thing you notice isn't how tidy they are. It's how close everything feels. Leaves brushing leaves, roots sharing the same stretch of soil, crops growing near enough that by most traditional advice, they should be competing with each other, but they aren't. This closeness is intentional. Each plant is chosen and placed with awareness of what it gives, not just what it takes. Taller plants soften harsh sun for those below. Broad leaves shield the soil so it stays cool and moist longer. Some roots loosen the earth, making it easier for their neighbors to breathe. Nothing is random, and nothing is isolated. Japanese farmers don't think in terms of this plant versus that plant. They think in terms of relationships: who protects whom, who feeds the soil, who attracts insects that help everyone else. The garden becomes less like a row of individuals and more like a small community where each member has a quiet role. There's something deeply familiar about this way of growing. It mirrors how many of us were raised: families living close, neighbors watching out for one another, shared effort making life lighter. No one had to carry everything alone. The garden reflects that same wisdom. For aging hands and slower days, this harmony matters. Closely planted crops shade out weeds naturally, meaning less bending and pulling. The soil stays healthier, so plants don't struggle as much. Problems show themselves earlier, before they turn into big fixes that drain your energy. Instead of forcing plants to behave, Japanese farmers observe and adjust. They guide rather than control, and when you stop trying to dominate the garden, it begins to cooperate with you. This approach turns gardening into a conversation. You notice which plants seem happier together. You remember where moisture lingers. You begin to sense balance instead of chasing perfection. Over time, the garden almost starts to manage itself, quietly, steadily, without drama. But here's the part most people miss. This closeness only works because of one quiet habit, a habit so simple, so unassuming, that many gardeners rush right past it, without realizing everything depends on it. One of the quietest differences in Japanese gardening happens before a single seed ever touches the ground. While many gardeners rush to plant as soon as the season turns, Japanese farmers slow down. Deliberately, they spend far more time listening to the soil than asking things from it. Soil preparation isn't treated as a chore to get through. It's treated as the work itself. They loosen gently, not aggressively. They return old plant matter back into the earth instead of clearing everything away. They pay attention to texture, smell, and moisture, knowing these signs tell more truth than any calendar ever could. To an outside eye, it can look like nothing much is happening. But this patience is doing powerful work. Healthy soil crowds out weeds before they ever get established. Balanced soil feeds plants steadily, so there's less need for fixing problems later. When planting finally begins, everything moves easier. The roots settle faster, water stays where it's needed, and plants don't struggle as much. This way of working feels especially familiar to those who've lived long enough to learn a hard truth. Rushing always costs more in the end. The extra minutes spent preparing today save hours of strain later. Fewer corrections, fewer moments of frustration, less bending down to undo mistakes that never had to happen. There's a quiet kindness in this approach, kindness toward the garden and kindness toward yourself. Japanese farmers understand that soil remembers how it's treated. When you give it care first, it returns that care slowly, faithfully, over time. For seniors, this philosophy is deeply practical. Preparing soil well means lighter maintenance through the season. It means walking into the garden with confidence instead of bracing for problems. It means trusting that your effort has already been stored beneath the surface, waiting to support you. And once the soil is finally ready, rich, settled, and alive, something unexpected happens next. They don't rush to take everything at once. They don't wait for one big harvest day. In many Japanese gardens, harvest doesn't arrive like a deadline. It doesn't build up toward one exhausting day where everything must be picked, carried, cleaned, and stored all at once. Instead, harvest happens quietly, a little at a time, almost without announcement. Vegetables are taken young and often. A handful of greens here, a few roots there, just enough for the next meal or two. Nothing oversized, nothing heavy. The garden is never stripped bare, and the gardener is never pushed past comfort. This changes everything. When harvests are small, baskets stay light. Hands don't ache from gripping weight. Knees aren't asked to bend longer than they want to. And because plants aren't stressed by being overgrown, they keep producing steadily instead of all at once. The garden stays alive, responsive, and generous, without demanding strength in return. Over time, this rhythm turns gardening into a daily check-in rather than a task to conquer. You step outside, look around, take what's ready, and leave the rest to grow. Some days you harvest, some days you simply observe. Both count. There's no pressure to keep up, no sense that you're falling behind if you skip a day. The garden waits. It always does. And here's something worth pausing for. If you find yourself moving slower now, staying longer with one plant, or choosing comfort over speed, that isn't decline. That's wisdom showing up. Years of experience naturally guide you toward what lasts instead of what exhausts. Gardening this way isn't giving less. It's giving exactly what's needed. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many gardeners quietly arrive at this rhythm without ever naming it. If that's you, you might nod along right now. And if you feel like sharing, a simple thought in the comments, even a few words, is enough. Gardens grow better when stories are shared. But here's what most people never notice. This gentle harvest style wasn't adopted later, when bodies changed. It wasn't a compromise. It was planned from the very beginning. If you study a traditional Japanese garden closely, you begin to notice something subtle. Nothing feels accidental. Beds are narrow, not because space is scarce, but because reach matters. Rows are arranged, so a gardener rarely has to step into the soil or stretch beyond comfort. Paths are clear and familiar, guiding the body the same way each time, without surprises. These gardens are not designed for a single season of strength. They are designed for a lifetime. From the very beginning, Japanese farmers assume the body will change. They don't wait for stiffness or pain to appear before adapting. They plan for it quietly, early on, with layouts that reduce strain and routines that become second nature. This foresight isn't dramatic, it's respectful. Predictable rhythms play a big role. Tasks are done in the same order, at similar times, day after day. This steadiness reduces mistakes and conserves energy. The garden begins to feel like a trusted place, not something you have to figure out again each morning. Familiarity becomes a form of support. There is dignity in this kind of design. It sends a clear message. The gardener belongs here at every age. The work does not outgrow the person doing it. Instead of abandoning the garden as the body changes, the garden evolves alongside its keeper. This approach also creates confidence. When everything is within reach, gardening becomes calmer, movements are smaller, decisions are simpler. You don't have to fight your space, it works with you. Over time, this cooperation allows gardeners to continue growing food well into later years without feeling like they're pushing against their limits. What's striking is how little attention this philosophy gets elsewhere. Many gardens are built for speed, not sustainability. For show, not for longevity. Japanese gardens, by contrast, quietly honor those who return day after day, year after year, with patience rather than force. And yet, even this thoughtful design, as powerful as it is, isn't the deepest reason their harvests remain so abundant, because the real secret goes beyond layout, routine, or physical ease. There's a reason many Japanese farmers return to the same crops year after year, generation after generation. It isn't habit. It isn't lack of imagination. It's memory. Living memory, passed down quietly through hands that have touched the same soil for decades. In these gardens, knowledge isn't written down as instructions. It's felt. A certain way the soil should crumble between fingers, the exact shade of green that means a plant is ready. Not tomorrow, not yesterday. Now. The pause before watering because the air already carries enough moisture. These things don't come from manuals. They come from repetition, from seasons watched carefully, from mistakes remembered without shame. When a farmer grows the same crops their parents and grandparents grew, they aren't limiting themselves. They're refining understanding. Each year adds another layer of awareness. Small adjustments accumulate. Timing becomes instinct. Problems are sensed before they appear. The garden responds because it's being read by someone who knows its language. This is where seniors hold a quiet advantage. Decades of gardening don't disappear just because trends change. Every season you've worked, every plant you've lost and learned from, every harvest that surprised you, all of that is stored wisdom. It lives in your habits, in how you move, in what you notice without thinking. Japanese farmers trust this kind of knowing. They don't discard it in favor of new techniques every year. They build on it. They let memory guide decisions instead of constantly starting over. And because of that, their gardens become deeply efficient, not from innovation, but from familiarity. This is why their harvests look effortless. They aren't guessing. They aren't experimenting endlessly. They are continuing a conversation that began long before them. And once you understand this, once you see that abundance comes from memory, not novelty, the idea of more vegetables starts to feel like the wrong question entirely. By now, it's clear the title was never really about numbers. 4 times more food sounds impressive, but Japanese farmers aren't chasing bigger piles or overflowing baskets. What they're really growing is balance. Less wasted effort, less food lost to neglect, and more nourishment taken at the exact moment it's needed when flavor is right and the body welcomes it. Their gardens move in a calm rhythm, nothing rushed, nothing forced. Vegetables are grown to be eaten, not displayed. Harvest slips naturally into daily life instead of interrupting it. The garden becomes a companion through the seasons, not a contest to win or a chore to endure. That's the quiet reframe. Abundance isn't loud. It doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up steadily and without stress. When gardening stops being a competition, it becomes something you look forward to again, which brings us to something important, something you already have. This way of gardening depends on qualities that deepen with age: attention, patience, observation, and time. Not time to race against, but time to work with. These aren't things you lose as you grow older, they're things you grow into. If you linger longer in the garden now, watching more than doing, that isn't hesitation, it's wisdom leading. And when you bring that presence into your garden, something beautiful begins, because in the end, the garden doesn't ask you to be faster. It asks you to be present, and that's something you've mastered over a lifetime.